We are going to talk about a movie.
This is gonna be a disaster.
It was one of the best movies of the year.
It's gonna go so well. Probably one of the last movies I would ever want to see in a theater. What is going on, everybody? Taylor here, and Jacob and I are here to do a review that I don't think we were planning on doing.
No.
But we sat down tonight and watched Miss Americana, the Netflix-produced documentary of Taylor Swift. And it's a documentary that I've been looking forward to ever since it was announced, and then it premiered at Sundance.
Yep.
And we've heard really good things from a lot of different people, just kind of saying that it maybe gave them a different perspective, or it's just something that they didn't expect to see from her. And like I said, we weren't really planning on talking about this, but after we watched it, I felt like it was definitely something that I wanted to talk about, but I also think you probably have an interesting perspective on it as well that maybe you weren't thinking you had.
So I'm not the biggest Taylor Swift fan. I think her music, I've grown up with her music just because my parents and my sister are giant fans.
You're the only
of her.
one in the family.
Yeah, I'm the one who
not.
doesn't think she's that. It's pop music, and that's what it's always been. And it's like I've never really been the biggest fan of her, although I never really got the hatred of her. Like I never really quite understood why did people hate this girl for just being who she is. And this documentary really does give insight into the life of Taylor Swift, and I thought that was quite fascinating.
Yeah, and we definitely, you and I came at this documentary from very different places. I very, very vividly remember buying her very first album when I was, oh God, if she put it out when she was 16, that means I was like 12. But I've grown up, very, very much grown up with her music because I'm about 4 years younger than she is, meaning that for the most part, by the time her albums would come out, I was kind of in the place she was when she wrote them. We've had this weird kind of thing where she would put music out and I would listen to it and go, I know this experience, or this is exactly what I need to hear right now as a teenage girl or a young adult trying to grow up in this crazy, crazy culture that we live in, where for normal, non-famous women, it can be very difficult to just survive in a culture that's still very male-centric a lot of the time. But for someone as under a microscope as she has been pretty much since she was 17 years old, it's just incredible to see that she's basically grown up in the limelight. I mean, there are stars who start younger than 16, but 16 is a pretty formative time in a person's life. Yeah. And that's kind of where we start in this documentary.
Yeah, it's very much a documentary. Like it follows basically the timeline of her making Lover, which was her most recent album, but then also like flashes back showing the history and who she was and where she's come from and all that. And there's a lot about it that I really like, and I mean we'll get to the one thing that I think is worth the for lack of a better word, price of admission. But I do have some critiques that we can get into. But yeah, overall, I thoroughly enjoyed this documentary, and I thought it gave insight into the life of this incredibly young and incredibly talented young performer.
And look, I guess if we need to, we can get into criticisms, but that's not really why I'm here. I think that the strong things about this documentary are what should be talked about.
Yes, definitely.
I don't really think that any faults this documentary has anything to do with her or the actual content of the documentary. So to me, it's just not worth talking about.
Yeah, and by criticisms, the only thing I'm really mentioning is there's about 4 or 5 stories that the documentary tells. There's about 4 or 5 different events that it tells. I would like, and each one could have been a documentary in of itself, and that's like the whole final act. I would say of the of about her and politics. That could have been a really, really fascinating 90-minute documentary, and that's just what I'm getting. I selfishly, it's a little too broad for me. Like, I would have loved to get into the nitty gritty a little bit, but overall, it does get into a lot of nitty gritty, and we can talk about that.
The problem is you can't make a documentary like that about Taylor Swift because up until this point in her life, she's been very private about her life. So in order to produce the documentary that you were wanting, where you really get to have several documentaries focusing on all of these things, it's kind of a circle that destroys itself.
Yeah.
Because if her life was in a place where she felt comfortable letting people in to tell that first documentary that tells the first part of her story, we in turn wouldn't really need the other ones. I don't think. No, but I get what you're saying. But like, with the way that she's lived her life up to this point, to me, this is really the only way you can make this documentary.
And that's fair.
Because she has tried her very hardest in a very public life to keep certain things to herself.
I definitely agree with that. I definitely agree there.
But it's the thing I think that kind of hit me the most about this documentary was, and the politics are definitely a big part, but the thing that I think really hit me the most was when she talks about her happiness and how basically all of her happiness was reliant on how other people saw her and if they were giving her the praise that she so desperately needed. And she was never really concerned until the last couple of years about her actual inner happiness and other parts of her life, which manifested itself in a lot of unhealthy ways, but particularly with this eating disorder that she at the time convinced herself she didn't have or didn't realize she has. And you see her talking about it, and then they flash back to these pictures and videos of her on red carpets, and you just feel sick. You just feel absolutely sick looking at her because you can tell she's not happy.
Oh, yeah,
you can
absolutely.
tell she's not healthy.
Yeah.
Like, it's just heartbreaking.
It is, and that is an aspect of this doc I really did enjoy, that they were very raw in how they approached and she was also very raw. She was willing to give them access to this, and access to her being very, very emotionally vulnerable, extremely willing to allow them to go, okay, tell us everything about your biggest insecurities, your big, like the things that no one knows about you that you don't want anyone to know about you. And
well, that moment in the car when they're talking to her about it, and she kind of just almost keeps repeating a mantra to herself while she's trying to talk about it of, when these thoughts creep in, I just go, nope, we don't do this anymore. We don't do this anymore. This doesn't lead us to good places. We don't do this anymore. And you can tell that she's telling her story, but she's also reminding herself, we don't do this. Like, this is not who we are anymore. And that's hard to watch.
It is, and it's incredible that she was willing to give them the opportunity to do this, and that's why, and that's something I really enjoyed about this, and that's why I think it resonated so much with me, just because you do get those moments, you do get the scenes where you're like, what, like that's real, that's genuine, and a genuine human moment from this insanely popular and giant megastar who is letting people into the most vulnerable moments of her life. And look, I can completely see a pessimist coming into this movie and going, oh, it's all staged. Like, oh, it's all staged. And there are aspects of it that maybe feel like that, but I highly, highly doubt any of it's staged, like, at all, just because of the way, like, a lot of she is genuine. The way she's feeling in those moments, you can just tell that, no, that's genuine.
Well, and
belief.
I don't want to turn this into a joke, but we've all seen Taylor Swift's acting, right?
Yeah.
Like, we've seen what that looks like. And she even gets down on herself about it in one of their music video shoots, where she goes, that's not the face that I want to be making. I don't know how to, like, I'm not conveying what I want to convey.
Yeah.
Which, like, look, if you're going into this with a pessimistic view of thinking it's staged, you're wasting your time watching it, because it's never going to change your mind, because you're not giving it the chance to change your mind. But you can clearly tell that a lot of this is really, really hard for her. Something that I want to touch on as well before we kind of get to the final act, because the final act is a really big part of what I want to talk about. There's a moment in the documentary where I knew exactly what was coming, and you caught on about 5 seconds after I did.
Yeah.
Where she's talking about touring and all this great stuff going on in her life, and then she mentions there's this moment that happens where everything kind of just comes crashing down for her. And this is when she won the MTV award.
Oh.
And someone decided they were going to go on stage and take a trophy from a 19-year-old and say, you don't deserve this award. It should have gone to somebody else.
Yeah.
And there are various aspects of this that just continue to blow my mind. First of all, they show a clip that I've never seen before where she's talking to reporters afterwards.
Yeah.
And you can just tell that she is heartbroken.
Yeah.
She is devastated because at that point she was still establishing herself in the music industry. She was 19 years old. She has Kanye West, who at the time was arguably one of the biggest stars around.
Easily.
Coming up on stage, very awkwardly stealing her moment.
See, I had never actually watched that scene before.
Really?
You'd heard of it. It was one of those ones that
I watched it live. So.
No, yeah, okay. Well, it was one that you all knew about. You couldn't miss it.
Yeah.
But I'd never actually sat down and actually watched the moment. I always thought he was the presenter. And that's why he did it. I didn't realize he literally just walked on stage and grabbed the mic.
He literally just comes out of nowhere.
Yeah. Wow.
And no, it's bad.
Yeah.
It's really bad. And you see her talking and going, I was excited because Kanye West, I love Kanye West, and he shows up on stage when I'm winning my award, and then you can tell that her face just... Yeah. In her face, she's just...
The whole mood changes.
It's horrible because what do you say after that?
Nothing.
As her, you can't do anything after that. And then something I'd also never heard of before, when everyone inevitably starts booing because who the hell does that to somebody? And she thinks they're booing her. Yeah. Because they wanted Beyonce to win. Yeah. Do you know what that does to somebody?
Oh, it's unbelievable.
Having an entire movie award show crowd just booing, and you think they're booing you for winning an award. That's horrific. Yeah. That is a very specifically horrific thing that probably only her and maybe a handful of other people will ever experience. Yeah. And that's just it's still one of the most awkward things, because I've seen that video more than once. I saw it when it happened and went, what the frick is this? What is happening? And clearly no one knew what the hell was happening. But I've seen it because it pops up. It pops up all the time. It pops up all the time. And the amount of times I've seen it, it does not get any less awkward. No. It always just feels...
I'd never seen the full video because they show the full thing. I've seen him when he actually says it. I've seen the memes. I've seen It's one of those things that everyone has seen in some form or another. But I just never watched the full video because I was like, why would I want to watch something really awkward? Yeah. There's no point.
It's not great. It's not a great experience. No, it's not at all. But then it kind of goes and tells this story of just everyone kind of turning on her. People saying that she's playing the victim. And then it worsens when Kanye decides to write a song and put her in it. Yeah. And then everyone decides that, obviously she should be fine with this. Why is she playing the victim? Yeah. And everyone all of a sudden just decides that she's this evil, conniving person trying to get fame off of Kanye using her in a song where I don't care who the fuck you are. If you call me a bitch in your song, and you're not my best friend in the entire world, like, sorry,
exactly.
but that is not okay, because I've tried to stay away from that controversy when it happened because I very vividly remember it happening. And I haven't seen the full or heard the full leaked audio or whatever the hell it is, but I highly, highly, highly doubt that she knew he was going to word it like that. And even if she did, this documentary shows us that at that point in her life, she was the smile, be a good girl, don't speak out, do what you need to do to make people like you. And if Kanye West, one of the biggest stars in the world, reaches out to you and says, I'm putting you in my song, what the hell are you supposed to do?
Yeah.
That is the most lose-lose situation I've ever heard in my life.
Yeah. And
it's devastating because then she goes on to say, I went away because that's what I thought everyone wanted. Like, nobody saw me for a year. Like, that's beyond.
It is. It's
anything
crazy.
I could ever imagine feeling like. Thinking the whole world just wants you to disappear.
Yeah.
That's horrific. And there's just so many little elements like that in this documentary where you realize that this woman who we've always seen as being on top of the world, it's just like the rest of us. Like, it's hard to remember sometimes that she's just as, if not more human than the rest of us.
Yeah.
And that these moments that 99% of people in this world will never understand because they've never experienced anything like it. It's just like, I honestly don't know how she has survived through most of it.
That's interesting.
Because it's just crushing. It's just crushing to think about it because she's not part of a girl group. She's not part of a band. She's not part of, like, she says it several times. I only have my mom to call when something happens. Like, they always say the loneliest place is at the top.
Yeah, it is. And that's something about this doco that I did find that they actually do touch upon, and they're not afraid to touch upon those subjects. And that's something I really did love about it, and I really enjoyed that. Okay, we are going to go there for a lot of this stuff, and they go there when it comes to the political stuff, but they really go there. And I to me, that's like, I was really enjoying it, and that's what took it over the line. It was, no, this is really good. And I think that's why it took it over the line, and then I kind of had to go back a little bit going, man, I could really have used a 90-minute one of this. Like, the actual story of her, of that, because I think it's clear that, especially considering the song that is being released as part of this documentary, the one that she records at the end, is so heavily tied to this. Like, I just feels that I would have loved it, and I know that's me projecting what I would rather instead of what we got.
And we don't do that, Jacob.
I know.
We don't do that.
I know.
Especially since you have a documentary. To me, this was her. This sounds so stupid, but this is how I see it. This was her coming out to the world documentary.
Yeah.
One of the biggest pop stars in the whole world, coming out to the world and saying, I know who you all thought I've been for the last 13 plus however many years, but this is who I actually am. Yeah. And as much as you, someone who freaking loves and is fascinated by politics, and as great of a documentary as that would have been, there's like at least just as many people who would have been like, why is this just a political Taylor Swift documentary? But it could have been fascinating.
It could have, and that's to me why I would have rathered that. But again, what I got, I'm really happy with. Now she gives a speech halfway.
This is the best speech.
She gives a speech to her dad, who the documentary has this. You don't know it's her dad. Yeah. Like at the start, it does this.
You only know it's her dad because there's a little subtitle that comes up that says Scott Swift or something, or Dad.
It says, and then at the end she says Dad.
Yeah.
And that's when you go, oh, this is to her dad, because at first it really comes across as though it's oh, this is the male producer who's very, no, you have to protect your brand.
But there's about 3 of them. There's
there
about
is.
3 men that sit
there
there.
is 3, and there's 2 of them who are very much thinking that. She gives this speech about why the Instagram post. Now, if you don't know what I'm talking about, right before the midterms, Taylor Swift was very, very anti-political. She didn't give her thoughts on politics. She didn't give her thoughts on really anything political at all.
Which I love the way that the documentary talked about that, because it told you why.
Yeah.
Every producer, everyone that worked with her said, don't be the Dixie Chicks.
Yes.
Don't give your political opinion in country music when nobody asked for it and have to disappear like the Dixie Chicks.
Yeah.
Which is
another great documentary.
crazy.
Yeah.
Crazy. Anyway, just wanted to let you guys know.
If you've never... sorry, just a plug. If you have never seen Shut Up and Sing, go watch that movie. It is that's an incredible documentary, and I think that's my problem. That's what I wanted this to be, because I knew this story and I was like, oh, this should have been Shut Up and Sing, because Shut Up and Sing is so good. Anyway, I'm just gonna leave that there. So she gives this speech, and it's basically just about why she hasn't put the post up yet. She's written it, but she's about to put it up, and
it's a post, because we didn't actually talk about.
Oh, sorry,
you got sidetracked. The post was before the midterm elections.
Yeah.
And she wanted to really speak out for her hometown of Tennessee. She wanted people to know that Tennessee Christian Americans were not what Blackburn was advertising that to be, because she had seen these advertisements and she went, I'm just angry. I'm angry that this is what she's trying to sell Tennessee Christianity as. And that's kind of the setup of why she's considering doing this post.
It's just after she has gone through what I thought was another really great moment in the documentary about her sexual assault, and how she had video evidence.
Like 8 witnesses.
She had 8 witnesses. Like, it was, no, he did this. No one was denying it except him.
And the lawyer.
And they had evidence and everything, and she won her case, but she went through hell to win it, and she had witnesses and
photographic
evidence of it happening, but she still went through hell to do it. And that's what made her, the documentary frames it, that's what changed her to go, no,
that was
I need to do this.
kind of the catalyst in her life of, I can't just keep my mouth shut all the time anymore. And
she gives this speech to her dad, to her
dad, and the rest of the 13 management team that she has around her.
And I said this, admittedly, her dad's worried about his little girl. Hey, there's nut jobs out there. There are nut jobs who could come out with guns, and this could happen. And she just gives this incredibly impassioned speech that is worth watching this documentary alone for. It is so, and there is no way it's staged. No way in hell. It is so impassioned, and just and shows you, oh, there goes.
Whoa.
We lost everything. It shows you everything she believes in that 2 seconds. In that 30 seconds, and it's incredible.
And it's kind of something that they set up, like you said, perfectly, because after her sexual assault case, and everything that has to do with that, she says, you better know what you stand for from now on. If something happens, you better know what you believe in. And then she gets this chance, and she basically just decides, no matter what anyone else in her team says, no matter what her family says, this is something she has to do for herself, and she doesn't care anymore about smiling and shutting up and just doing what's best for her career, supposedly, at that point. I love how her mom is just like, all of y'all, stop it right now. Listen to what she has to say, because this is important. Yeah. She's very much she's like, hey, I worry about her safety too, as her mother. But hello.
This is important.
This is so important. And then it goes back to my whole thing of, literally, to me, no matter what Taylor Swift does, it's lose-lose situation for her. And I've always believed that. This documentary just makes that more clear, because after she makes her post, you have all these political pundits and news outlets and all this media saying, oh, she doesn't know what she's talking about, and she like, it's the same thing that happened with the Dixie Chicks when they spoke out, where it's like, oh, she doesn't know what she's talking about and she should just stick to her lane and all this and blah blah blah. And then all the people who've been yelling at her for her whole career that she needs to speak up were like, oh, why is she speaking up? Like, it literally, that was always going to happen, though. Like, that was 100% going to happen no matter what. But it goes to how devastated she is after she learns that she wins. That she did everything she could, but
didn't work.
But it didn't work. And her mom sits down with her and says, we build from here. We've got 2 years. Yeah. We build.
Look, like I said, the documentary is absolutely fascinating. It's incredible.
And as much as I love those moments, there are some other moments I really want to talk about that I loved, because those are clearly the moments that make the documentary what it is. Like, those are the dramatic moments that really show the hell that she's been through her whole career. But I love the moments where we get to watch her writing songs, where she's coming up with lyrics and we're watching her do it, where you can tell that's just her brain. She can sit there and fire something off, and all of a sudden
you get you actually see the creative process, which I actually did really like. I did like that you got to see the creative process and what her creative process is, and that's always fascinating to me. Any form of musical documentary or any form of musical, like, anytime you're going to look into the creation of music, the creative process is fascinating.
Absolutely. And just like, it's just it's fascinating to watch her work, because to me she's just kind of a step beyond a lot of other pop artists that I've seen. It comes to her and she rolls with it, and like, she just puts this music together. And I know it doesn't connect with you, and I don't mean this as an insult, but you're not her target.
No, I know that. I know that.
Like, to me, it has always connected with me exactly the way that it should. Like, to me, she's always been...
You mean her target's not a 27-year-old white male?
I mean, it might be. I may have to change my market research and do some adjustments. No, but even because you grew up with her the same way that I did.
Yeah, I
mean, you were closer to her age than I was. And it's just... It's so fascinating to watch the way her brain just kind of works with that music, and how she just turns it into what it is, because it's not her, for the most part, from what we saw, like, slaving over stuff. It just comes to her brain, and it's just beautiful the way that it kind of rolls and does what it does. But you learned a fun fact about Taylor Swift in this documentary that is only shared also by the Beatles.
Oh yeah, that she had 4 number 1 albums for 6 weeks in a row consecutively. That is crazy. That is like nuts. How the hell do you do that? Anyway, whatever.
But I mean, and that's a huge deal.
Yeah.
That is a huge deal, and you can like Taylor Swift or you cannot like Taylor Swift, but that is beyond. Like, that is what people aspire to reach as a musician. Yeah. And I think, to me, it comes back to something that's resonated with me for a long time. I heard someone say this probably when I was like 14 or something, but the music that is made for and connects with teenage girls and girls that are like in their early 20s, and just basically girls that are growing up and figuring out who they are and becoming women, like, that music is never taken as seriously as music that's created for those seen as more sophisticated or grown up or whatever you want to call it. That's never been seen as on the same level. It just societally, it never has been. It's always been held to a completely different standard, and it's just like, to me, that's kind of why I think people still look at Taylor Swift and don't take her seriously, even though she's reached a milestone that only the Beatles have reached.
And that's fair.
And like, I'm hoping something that comes out of this documentary, and I've seen a couple people who were at Sundance say this, that they saw it and just as a person made them look at her and go, some of the opinions I've had maybe weren't based on factual things, or were maybe based on, I guess, like misogynistic tendencies that I didn't know I had, or just like, just things like that, where it just takes you a second to just open your mind and just watch it. Just see what it has to offer you and go, oh, maybe I was wrong about a thing or two, possibly.
Yeah. And that's my recommendation for this documentary is, even if you're not a fan of Taylor Swift, there is enough in there for you to at least chew on, at least a little bit. Like there is enough in there for you to enjoy, even if you're not a fan of her music or her as a person. You'll get an understanding, and that's what I think is so important about it.
I think it is too. I think it's completely important because, like I said, she's pretty much spent her whole career in a lose-lose situation with almost everything, and it took a big emotional and mental and physical toll on her for a very long time. And that's just, it's horrible. It's a horrible thing to see, but by the end of the documentary, it feels beautiful and motivational and hopeful, and it feels like, it just makes me happy because you see that she's found a version of happiness that works for her without just being about how everybody else sees her. And we see that that she, in her time away, found somebody to support her. She found this relationship that she kept completely to herself.
Yeah, the documentary doesn't even actually go into it. Like,
it doesn't.
Really.
If you followed her career, you know who it is.
Yeah,
but it's very,
but
it's very respectful of not really showing his face or really going into their relationship, other than just showing him being supportive of her. And you can tell just the way she talks about it. There's a video that he records of her singing to him. You don't see his face, you don't hear him talk.
No.
But you can tell that that's probably the happiest she's been in a very, very long time. It's just little things like that that make this documentary super worth it to me, is you get those little quirks that show you the kind of person she is. There are moments in this where she's hilarious. Like, she's just fun, and she's just trying to be her, and she's trying to enjoy this. And I think that this is kind of a new part in her career. This is a new chapter ever since she started speaking out, where I think she can just start actually enjoying the touring and the recording and just like actually being made happy by it, instead of pretending like it makes her happy for the sake of everybody else. But I mean, there were a couple of times where I was really close to just crying because that's anyone with a fainter heart may not have been able to come out on the other side of this the way that she did, with all the pressure and spotlight and all that stuff that's on her. And that kind of stuff, mental health and dealing with issues with your body is no joke. Like that stuff really, really, really takes a toll.
Oh yeah.
And just her being willing to share this journey that she's been on since, like, we saw footage of her going all the way back until she was like 12.
Yeah.
Not a lot,
no.
But we did see a little bit, and we followed her from the start of her career at 16 to where she is now. And I thought that it was really great for what it wanted to be. Yeah. I know that it's not what you wanted it to be. Yeah. But I
still thought it was really good. For
what it set out to be, I thought it was really great. I think everyone should check it out for themselves and really form their own opinions, because I think that this documentary in particular really has the opportunity to be very personal to different people for very different reasons. I think that this is really going to hit people for a lot of different reasons, as long as you're open to it. So please check it out. If you guys have seen it, please let us know your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear from you guys. We put our links down in the description as always. Our Letterboxd accounts are down there if you want to see how we rated it and what our reviews were. You guys are seriously the best. Thank you for all of your support, and we will see you next time.